Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help simplify the lives of our families preparing for college with for 16 to 26-year-olds. And I'm with Bobby Hood, our local ACT, SAT guru. Bobby, what's going on in your world this week, I guess?
Not a whole lot. We had ACT last week. Students took the test, and I've gotten a little more automated with my systems. And so, like this, for the first time in all these years, I sent every single student a good luck email and then a follow-up email, because I've sent good luck emails before, but a follow-up email and said, hey, how did the test go? Here's all these questions, and all of my students responded with these very in-depth thoughts about the test and how they felt about it and how they did. And it really was, I think it is really positive. And this is, just one of these things that you can do now that I can organize myself more clearly, and so it's just feeling much more, I'm feeling much more in touch with my students than I was before. And it's really amazing.
Yeah. And so you did a lot of this through AI, correct?
Yes. So, well, yeah, I had, like, for instance, I asked AI some questions, it's just like, hey, so I've got like a field in my student records with like, when's your test, right? But I would have to update that. But I've added to my setup for my students a place where they log in and they can add in and change when their plan is to take a test. So now I have that date. So then I can just send that automated follow-up email because I know the date they're taking the test. Because it wasn't just, a lot of students took the ACT last Saturday, but some of my students have a date like in another 2 weeks. That's not your normal ACT date, but it's a special ACT date because they had time, extended time. And so now I know, and I can send them that email on that day. And it frees up a lot of, time and lets me communicate better with my students. It's really neat. But yeah, and that's what I wanted to talk about today is, so I've been wanting to do this forever. It's just was so much coding work. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to create an app where my students could practice and do practice questions for the ACT. And it's just so much work. Years ago, I created a proctoring app that, has been out on the internet, that's been out on the Apple App Store for many years. And so you might remember me showing this to you a long time ago. Like, you can proctor a test, right? And so you can just say, oh, I want to take a test. And so my students now can do that, right? And so you say, okay, I want to proctor the test. And you'll hear me in a moment, like, this is, okay, I'm taking a test. And you say, let's begin the test. And you hear me narrating, proctoring the test.
Right.
So that's the proctoring app. And so you start the test, and then you can create background, like distracting background noises, which will help you with test anxiety, right? So if you say, I want the test to be a little distracting, now people are shuffling papers, scratching with their pencil. You can make it a little more distracting. Now, I designed this app 7 years ago, and it took me 5 or 6 months of work to do that, to create that. And it was written in this old programming language that is like not really a thing anymore.
Right.
And so I've been using Claude Code, which has been in the news so much. Claude Code is not this thing, Claude Bot, that all the crazy news is about. Claude Code is just a thing that helps you code apps and things like that. And I said, I need to update my, proctoring app, but this old programming language doesn't exist anymore, right? And I said, what should I do? And it said, well, show me the code. And so I gave it the code to the old app, and it said, well, how about I just, rewrite this and make it work in a browser with like current code? And I said, okay. And so 11 minutes later, it said, I'm done. Here's your exact same app living in a browser. That's what I just showed you is not what I coded 7 years ago, but what Claude Code coded in 11 minutes based on what I did. It just copied it over, right? But then I said, well, wait, can I also can I make that ACT practice questions app that I was meaning to make for years? And so here you go. Now all of my students who enroll with me have access to this, right? And so say, okay, I want to do like math problems, but I want to do, I want to focus on algebra problems, and I want to just do hard questions. And then I say, do I want to look at all the questions that are available, or do I only want to look at questions that I've missed before, or questions that I've questions I haven't seen, or questions that I missed previously? So you start practicing, and just, here's your question, right? And you can practice it. And this is a past ACT question. And you can practice on it. You can choose an answer, and then you choose an answer, and then it'll remember the questions you got right or wrong. And then you can come back and present them. And then when you go through and you answer some questions, then it will, let's say I'm just going to click through some answers and get some questions right or wrong, right? And say, okay, so here's some questions. And then when you're done, it gives you a summary of questions that you got right or wrong. It remembers the questions you got right or wrong. It stores that data so that I can review that. And so in a session, then I can say, oh, let's review those questions that you got wrong. And I have a list of them.
Well, and here's the other interesting thing, Bobby. You've told us several times that you don't get that feedback when you actually take the tests.
Exactly. Right.
And so you don't know what you missed. And
exactly. Right. And so this is what I've done for years with my students, is I say, take a test, and then you score it. And then that's what we do in the sessions, is we review the questions you missed. But so the homework has always been just take another test. But the thing is, now you can just do algebra questions. Oh, I'm having trouble with geometry. I want to focus on that. Or in English, you can say, I want to look only at the punctuation questions, right? So it's ITS versus IT''S. I've never had that before, where I can deliver to the students, oh, here's 150 questions about apostrophes and pronouns, right?
And Bobby, I love that for this reason. If you pound it, then all of a sudden, you start remembering that. But when they alternate all the questions, you lose the learning. So having that repetition is awesome.
So that's the thing. So it is really important to do a test, right? To take a test where the questions are mixed up in order.
Sure.
But if you know that you've got everything down, but you only miss punctuation questions, you do need to build that muscle memory. And that's why I called this week muscle memory. Is you need to do 15 grammar punctuation questions and get those figured out. Then you take the real test. So this is a great supplement for my students. It's just a thing. But and so that's part of the thing, is, hey, I've got this cool new product that my students are going to like. But it's also, I typed that into Claude Code and said, I'd like to have an app where my students could practice homework questions. And it asked me a bunch of questions. We discussed it. And then it produced a thing. And then, and what it did, it was taking the questions and putting them, and it cut them all wrong, and they all looked wrong. And the questions were really big, and would have half of another question. And I was like, okay, wait, no, that looks weird. And I showed it examples of what it had done wrong. And it said, oh, let me fix that. And so it took, maybe 6 hours of my time in total to get that app working that way.
Which is amazing. That's
utterly insane. It would have taken me 7 months of work to create something like that. And so this is that thing. This is what, I think a lot of people are, there are so many scary stories about AI, and there's so much news about AI that it's just overwhelming. But it's what I saw 2 months ago. I just heard on a podcast that somebody said, okay, it's now, it crossed over a line with the coding. They just said, suddenly Claude Code now, you just tell it what you want to do, and it just does it.
Well, and
it's crazy.
It goes back to, I hear a lot of parents, and I'm sure you do too, that they're concerned about AI. And I think that I could be wrong, and I'd love to have people comment about this, but I feel like at schools, they're kind of going, it's
right.
Stop. It's don't use it for evil, which I agree with, right?
Absolutely.
But we have to get to a point where we help our young people understand that this isn't going away, and our older people, and that how do you use it for good, not evil? And think about the time savings, Bobby.
Absolutely.
That just in your instance, your sharing went from months to hours.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we translate that to other pieces of the puzzle?
100%. And that's the thing that's happening now. Is it is now going to be a fact of life that for certain types of jobs and things, that this is going to be something people are doing. And for me, as a one-person tutoring business, the ability to create an app that will help my students, like that is a truly good use of AI. But it has to be done. You have to understand what you're doing. And I did have to have a certain basic amount of a fairly strong amount of past, coding knowledge to be able to understand what was happening and, get it all enabled and get it working and figure out like how to share it on because that's embedded in my website, right? So it's like on the Bobby Hood online tutoring website. So, you had to understand some things to do it, but this is the thing that is going to be happening, and people can feel whichever way they want about AI, but it is now at this point, it's not going to be stopping it, but it is what most people remember is when it first came out a couple of years ago, it was just this thing you could type and chat to and have weird discussions with or whatever in a chat box. But this is a whole different thing. This is a coding tool, a coding assistant that can help you code apps. And I did not know how to do any of the, I could have learned the coding that it would take to create this in months.
But why?
Right. But yeah, and I don't have time to, because I need to be tutoring my students. And
yeah, you need to do your day job, not learn an IT role as well. And
that's the thing, is that this is looking for how this can change and help your business, you and your business. I mean, that's one of the things, I've kept all of my, historical records about how many sessions I did and which students and all that. I have kept that in a spreadsheet for 16 years with multiple tabs and thousands of rows, and all this stuff. And I gave that to Claude and said, okay, what should I do with this? And it said, oh, there's a lot of information here. I'll just make that into a database, just take all the records and put it in a database. Oh. But then it said, did you know that your top referrer is named this parent? And I said, wait, I thought my top referrer was that parent. And they said, no, this parent actually has, and it said, this one referred more, but this person referred people who who spent more money or something like that. Yeah, I was just like, wait. So it was suddenly just volunteering insights about, it's like, oh, and this and this. And so it's giving me ideas for how to streamline and do a better job and be more efficient. It's absolute insanity.
Well, and Bobby, that's huge because, small business people too. Yeah, there's so much that we can talk about on this, but as small business people, like in my corporate world, I spent time and time and time on spreadsheets and looking through data, right? Think about the crossover now to even that world where it's like, here's the info, spit it back out to me, tell me what I need to be looking for. And of course, we always have to double check that, right? And do the checks and balances.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's part of the thing that you have to learn, is that the first thing you ask it, it's not going to do a very good job. And then you have to talk about it and then say, wait, I don't like this. Oh, this result is not what I wanted. No, that's not it. You have to check it. You have to do all that. You have to have the skills and the knowledge to know what good is and what isn't, right? But it is that was the other thing sort of in that same video. They're like, hey, coding, the most famous, brilliant coders in the world have said in interviews in the past month, I don't code anymore. I manage Claude Code and other coding agents, but I'm still doing my job. It's just now I have them. And so they're doing much bigger and more complicated projects now as a result. But the other thing they said is anyone who uses spreadsheets needs to know that within a few months, it will be an expected part of your job that you are constantly using some sort of, form of AI. That was the other thing that happened 2 months ago, is suddenly Claude Code could write almost any code very quickly, perfectly. And suddenly several of the different things, Microsoft's Copilot suddenly got really, really good at working. Yeah. And that's it. So that's the information. I thought it's important for those parents who are resisting and, saying, oh, that's just dumb, I don't need to know about it. No matter what you think of it, it's going to affect your job if your job involves a computer in any way at all.
Well, it is. And Bobby, next week, what I'd like to talk about is what is happening with jobs. because I've been doing a
Absolutely.
lot of research on that as well, and expectations and how companies are catching up and all that.
It's
So,
really important. Yeah.
yeah. So
Because
let's,
one of my, well, as you know, several of my good friends are coders, and they are very nervous about what's going to happen, right? But they know it's happening now. So,
yeah.
right. So next week, yeah, let's continue the discussion and let's see what the effects on the job market will be.
Yeah. And I know it's scrolling across the bottom of the screen, but I put your website information in. So if people want to call you, find out more about your tutoring, it's there, and they can just click on that and get in touch with you, because this is an absolutely cool tool, people. And one of the reasons why I love Bobby, and I've always said this, is you go straight to the point. It's like, what aren't you getting? And let's get you getting it, to put it in very simple terms, so that you don't have to spend your life prepping for ACT and SAT. These kids, I mean, it's all about, let's get to the root of the problem and let's fix that.
Yeah,
right?
get in and out and get done. Absolutely.
And this, my gosh, this is, right to that point. So I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, great. I'll see you next week.
All righty. Bye, Bobby.